In the past year and a half, I've interviewed dozens of people who have had near-death experiences. Many times, they learn incredible lessons through these experiences and then make dramatic changes in their lives. In this video, I'm going to show you some of the most memorable and significant changes that people have made after their NDE. First, there's Dannion Brinkley. Dannion described himself as a bully before he was struck by lightning in 1975. After this experience and his life review, Dannion realized he needed to make huge changes in his life.
I was just a jackass, tough guy, bully, sports, fist fighter, United States Marine Corps. That mindset. I didn't care anything about any of this kind of stuff, any of these kind of conversations. I grew up in the deep South. Everybody goes to hell where I come from. So I already knew what was going to happen to me in that religious point because of fundamentalism. And so I had no interest in this until one day I was struck by lightning talking on the telephone. And I discovered that I was a spiritual being with absolutely nowhere to go. But absolutely no way to escape the fact that I not only was a spiritual being, that I had chosen and was chosen to be here at this particular time. Nowhere to go. And on top of that, I was dead. I was completely paralyzed. I was blind, and I was burning and on fire because of the damage done by the electrocution burning my nerve endings. And both of these things happened at the same time. So I had to grow up really fast, learn how to walk, learn how to quit messing in my pants, and go from Superman to a helpless cripple who was never given more than 6 months to live because of the damage done on the inside of me, to dealing with the fact that I am a spiritual being like everyone that's here. And not only that, I was chosen, and I chose to be here at this time, at this point in history, and that I had come per breath. So that's who I was and who I am. And then what really happens is this. Once you escape this body, you have this opportunity to have what's called a life review. And it's where you see your entire life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. And you have missed nothing. You know everything that you have ever seen. And you watch it from a second-person point of view as though you were your own best friend. And then you literally become every person that you ever encounter. And you feel the direct results of your interaction between you and that person. Most of mine was experiencing pain and anguish and suffering and the brutality that the nature of my life had created. And some good things. But somewhere along in you see in your life, you understand that you live in a world that has goals, structure, and parameters to it. And it has responsibilities and intentional actions that define it. It's not airy-fairy, loose, woo-woo, you got to do this, you got to do that. There are rules and energetic patterns that you function in. And that the world is fair and just, and no one gets away with anything. Nobody gets away. So the power of forgiveness means you take one step to the right and get out of the line of fire so that the divine system gets them while you're standing between you and them. One of the greatest lessons is to learn to forgive. I think that when you see your life pass before you, Lauren, and you watch it from a second person point of view, then you literally become every person that you ever encounter. Then what you have to do is there is a question that you'll ask yourself. And this is my way of saying it. You know, it's not the way, it's my way. If God could not come today, or whatever you hold to be divine, could not come today and it sent you, in the life you just reviewed, what difference did you and God make? I became a hospice volunteer. I built the largest end-of-life care volunteer program for dying veterans in American history. And I am the co-author of the standard end-of-life care model now used by the Veterans Administration in their program for veterans. So as I sit here this evening talking to you, if I had to look back over my life and had to give it a value, the value would be this. When I came to the VA in 1984, it did not have a hospice or a palliative care program. It has both, and I am partially responsible for that creation. So I made life better for past and veterans, and I found it.
Another person who changed their life was David Bennett. David worked incredibly hard to get his dream job as a lead engineer on a research vessel at a young age. He thought that his career was what mattered most, until he drowned and had a near-death experience. During this time on the other side, David also learned about how loved he was, even if he didn't realize it. Finally, he discovered that his idea of truth might be different than he thought.
And then I saw this speck of light, and it was the only thing to look at in this darkness. And so you're just kind of drawn to it. And as I paid attention and put awareness on this light, I felt like suddenly there was movement toward the light. And to this day, I don't know if I was moving toward it, it was moving toward me, but there was movement toward this light. And as I got closer and closer, I started feeling these waves of love. I felt almost like a warm embrace. I was just mystified by this. And so I kept getting closer and closer. And the closer I got, I started to recognize that the light itself wasn't just a beam of light. It was millions upon millions of fragments of light. And they were all in movement. And they were, if you've ever seen like a school of fish, when they're all balled up together, and suddenly they'll take a change of direction and they all shift at the same time. And you can see all the different multitudes of colors in their scales and that sort of thing. Well, all these fragments of light were multiple, colors. They all had that same kind of movement. And I was just in awe. I was just in awe of what I was experiencing. And I kept getting closer and closer and closer. And I was feeling more loved and loved. And and so eventually 3 fragments broke away and they started approaching me, coming toward me. And as they did, I understood. It was a clear sense of communication, but I understood that they were welcoming me home. And I was just overwhelmed with this love and this welcoming that I was receiving. And eventually a dozen of these light fragments came and they were all greeting me. And I realized that at this point that I had become a fragment of light. And they communicated with me that we were going to go deeper into the light. And as we did, we went into this area. To me, it felt very spherical, a big giant ball, and we went inside. And once we got inside, it was like I started reliving my life. And it wasn't like watching a movie screen or anything as simple as that. It was much more involved because it felt like I was reliving it, but not only from my point of view, but from everyone I'd ever interacted with from their point of view. And so that was mind-blowing, to say the least. And so again, I was in absolute awe. But then I started to realize what I was watching, and that I also realized that this group of beings that greeted me, that came into this area, the sphere with me, were experiencing it the same way I was. So they were reliving my life through my life review. That's what it really is, a life review. And so I was like, I was because I was a brash young man. I was really a brash young man. I really didn't care about other people's points of view. I was very self-involved, and so we started experiencing, because this is more experiencing, because it's not just my point of view, but it's like my consciousness fragmented into these multiple streams, and I'm experiencing it from whoever I've interacted with, their point of view. It was just multi-dimensional viewing this life, and I did. I was very self-involved, so I stepped over people, I ran over people. I really didn't care, but my soul family was experiencing this the same way I was, because that's what I call them now, is my soul family. And I was a little bit ashamed of some of the things that I was doing, but they weren't. They were just loving me, supporting me, and just observing. There was no judgment whatsoever. It was just observation of what was going on. The judgment that was happening within me more than anything. And I got to see things in a way that just, again, in awe. I was in absolute awe, where I would see things that I did with just pure loving intention, without any thought of something for myself. Those would create these incredible ripples. When I did something that, I had a huge ego, all right? And something that really fed my ego, like becoming the chief engineer of a research vessel in my mid-20s, that was incredible for me, meant very little in the near-death experience. It caused the least amount of ripples, okay? But when I did something with loving intention for someone, it created these immense ripples of after effects, I was an engineer. I saw things pretty black and white. And suddenly I saw that there's a truth that resides within us. That's our personal truth. And so it's not just the factual truth, because as an engineer, that's what I dealt with, was factual truths, hard and fast, hard and cold, facts and things like that. But there's also a truth that resonates within our heart, and we feel it in our heart a lot of times. And I call that personal truth. And so those three things, acceptance, tolerance, and truth, kind of became my mantra.
Nicole Kerr's life changed in a different way. She grew up as a very big people pleaser and needed her father's approval. Her near-death experience was a way of diverting her onto her own path, not her father's, and allowing her to reclaim her life.
And I will tell you, my life before that was very much, I was a people pleaser, a parent pleaser. I really didn't have a concept of who I was and what my own identity was. I grew up in the South, in Mississippi, a very conservative household, very religious household. My dad was an ex-Marine, so it was his way or the highway, very dogmatically positioned. And in order to be seen as one of his favorite children, I decided I would apply to the Air Force Academy, because they had just started admitting women and sign up to be in our U.S. military. Now, mind you, my whole background had no military aspiration, okay? I was in ballet, I was a model. So I was not what you would call your ideal candidate for the military, but I was so into pleasing my dad and seeking his approval and love that I did it. And then once I got out there to the academy, during basic training, I knew, Lauren, that this place was not for me. I knew it at a soul level, but I couldn't quit, because in our family, failure is not an option. And when you go through this arduous process of going to one of our military academies, the mindset to think that you could just quit because you don't like it or it's not for you, my dad would not have tolerated that. He's just like, you stick in there and you gut it out. You deal with the pain. This is what you signed up for. And ultimately, it'll make you a better person. Well, that was a lot of pressure that I was living under. And I had an immense fear of failure as well. So I lived with a lot of fear every single day at the academy. There was a lot of abuse going on there on all levels. And I just couldn't voice that I wanted to quit. It wasn't for me. So what happened was, I will tell you, from the very beginning of my near-death experience at age 19, my sophomore year as a cadet out at the United States Air Force Academy, I could clearly remember the white lights that I encountered as my body flew from this 1965 Corvette convertible. I'm putting up a picture of the actual car. And as
Oh
you
my
can see, I don't
gosh.
know, Lauren, how would you describe that?
It's wrecked. Am I seeing this right?
Yes, that is the passenger side
Yeah.
of a 65 two-door Corvette convertible.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so needless to say, I was ejected. We were both ejected out of the car. I was pronounced dead at the scene of the accident. And it wasn't until EMS came about 10 to 13 minutes later, they took the blanket off of me that had been put on by some bystanders who couldn't get any vitals on me. And the paramedic, who I now call one of my angels because I believe in angels and they come in many forms. And in my case, I had 3 come in the human form. And one of them was the paramedic, John Hartling, who was a former Navy SEAL, actually. Very hardcore, and he didn't believe the word of the bystanders. Thank God. He took the blanket off of me and couldn't get any vitals on me. So the last thing he did was called a sternal knuckle press, which in the healthcare field, it's designed to elicit pain in the body. So they just rub your knuckles right up your sternum. And when he did that, the only sign of life he could get out of me was my right pupil. My eyelid flickered and it dilated. Now, have you heard of that phrase, our eyes are the window to our soul? Have you heard of that, Lauren?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so at that moment, when my soul was coming back into my eye, I was coming back from the other side, and that's how my soul got back in my body. And at that exact minute, they were able to get a blood pressure reading of me of 60/0. Now, the normal blood pressure is 120/80. So you can still see at 60/0, I'm in and out of death. And I will tell you that you do see your deceased loved ones on the other side. I found out right after I published my book that I was sitting writing one day and I smelled cigar smoke, and nobody in my household smoked cigars. So I found that really odd. And then I hear this voice going, Nicole, and I was looking around going, who in the world is that? And then all of a sudden I hear him say, this is your angel. And I go, my angel? And he said, yeah, I was the angel that saved you. I was Casper the Friendly Ghost, and I am your grandfather on your paternal side. And I'm like, oh my God, Granddaddy Kerr. And he's like, yeah. And so what was so interesting about this was he came to me the middle of August, okay? And he died in the middle of August at age 58 from a massive heart attack. And he was an alcoholic at the time. And I was 58 years old in August when he came to me, and he said, Nicole, it's time that you know who I was. You're the same age as I was when I passed away, and you were in the car with a guy who was drinking, and now I found out later was an alcoholic at the age of 21. So they had similar paths, but he told me I could see the pain that you were in. I could see the suffering you were going through. I could see how you did not want to be there, but didn't know how to get out of there, quote, saving face. And the only way to do that with your father was through something as horrific as a car crash, because I am now a 100% disabled veteran of our United States Armed Forces. And that would be the only, quote, legitimate excuse that I could ever have come up with to be able to get out of it.
Your relationship with your father was so paramount to who you were as a person.
Mhm.
How was your relationship able to change after your spiritually transformative experience?
Oh, yeah, we don't have one now.
Okay.
My dad is dogmatically positioned. He is right about everything. He's right about, he has become a mini minister. He is preaches in 2 different churches in Australia. He knows what is right. He knows what God said. He thinks he is, and my whole life, I saw him as God. And when he told me with the car crash that I disappointed him because I broke his rules of no drinking, no smoking, and no dating cadets, and that I also disappointed God, the Father in heaven, he has never wavered from that blame, even though the guy that was driving was drunk and the state of Colorado, charged him with vehicular assault. He was clearly to blame My father still blames me for getting in the car with someone who was drunk and will never apologize for that, never retract that, and never release that. And it doesn't matter what I've said to him. It doesn't change the fact that, I disappointed him, and he doesn't care about a relationship. His relationship now is like, it comes with massive strings that I would have to completely disown my whole story in order to, and go back to what they raised me as, in order to get into his good graces. But I don't want to. I don't have any desire, and it's sad. But at the end of the day, I had to go through a lot of counseling in order to sever my relationship with him. And it's been very sad for me because my mother is very codependent with my father. And she has informed me I can't have a relationship with her unless she is in relationship with my father and Jesus. They're a three-stranded cord. So I can't have one with her because she will tell everything I tell her to my father. And, it's just, they're religious addicts, and it's just, I'm never going to be able to get what I need from them. So I actually send them love and light and healing, but I can't physically in this time, space, reality in the rest of my days on this planet have any more interaction with them because it is too toxic for me to put myself back into it. And they're not changing. And I think that's the thing, is when you have to understand that your parents are never going to change. You keep hoping and hoping that they're going to get you, they're going to understand you, they're going to approve, they're going to go, okay, Nicole, we'll set our relationship with God and Jesus aside, and we'll see you for who you are. No, it's never happened in my case, and it never will. My dad is extremely narcissistic, and if you know anything about narcissists, it's just not going to ever work. So I have to take care of me, and setting boundaries and moving on with my life and my message is what I've had to do. And unfortunately, in their physical beliefs here, I can't have one with them.
How have you been able to stay so positive?
Because I believe to my absolute core, and I'm so passionate because I have been given a gift. This car crash turned out to be the biggest gift in my life because it broke me out of the little, dome that I was in. And I now have become free to, like in space, I'm just free to be me. And I love me for who I am.
While there are so many examples of people who have changed their lives after their NDEs, the last one I will share with you today is of Scott Drummond. Scott was pronounced dead for 20 minutes after a ski incident, and during that time, he realized that material possessions didn't matter as much as he thought. First, I'll play the clip where he described himself before his NDE. Then, I'll play when his life started to change while he was dead.
Up until that time, it was all about money. I wanted to get ahead. My goal that I set with my two brothers was to be millionaires by the time we were 32 years old. And so when you do that, you basically commit to doing whatever it takes to become one. And when I had my experience, I realized that it wasn't all about money. It was basically about how you treated people. I was out of town, and I'd been spending a lot of time out of town, probably 3 to 4 weeks at a time. Because again, it was about money. And so when I came home, we had a good Christmas. And I'd been gone for 3 or 4 weeks before that. And I was a pretty selfish person. There again, it was all about money. And so when I came home, I decided to go skiing during that Christmas holiday. And then something happened that was something that I wasn't very proud of in a lot of ways. I had a review of my life. And I've heard this story from a lot of other people that they've had life reviews. I totally understand what they went through. Because you don't just see it on a video screen. You don't just see it in your head. What you do is you live it. You live every emotion that happened from the day that you were born until I was 28 years old. I started off by seeing myself being on my mother's stomach, now being given life, to come into this world. And I'll never forget seeing how I hurt people. When you're going after money and you're going after status in life, you almost do everything you can to get ahead. I played professional basketball over in Europe, and you always wanted to be just a little bit better than that other person, because sometimes that's all you needed to get to the next level. And so I knew how to do that very well, and it transferred into my everyday life in the business world. But what I didn't realize is, until I had this life review, is how the other person felt when I did something maybe unethically to get better than him or her. In a life review, you would think you'd feel guilty. You'd feel like you were being stepped on or stabbed at or disciplined. It was not like that at all. For me, it was more of a learning experience. I had to learn how to treat people better. The thing I noticed was I didn't see any of my riches around me. I didn't see any of those motorhomes or boats or toys or all my cars. I didn't see any of that. The only thing I saw was how I treated people. And this has probably been one of the biggest learning experiences of my life, is to try to understand how people feel about what I'm saying to them, and to listen, because every person's journey is totally different. After I reviewed my life, I went, okay, I did it. I didn't have anybody to argue with. There was no way to explain why I did what I did. I did it, and I accepted it. Well, after standing there for a few minutes and contemplating what had happened, I realized that everything that was done in that life review was done with love. And I realized that, I could have been chastised. Somebody could have walked up and smacked me or put me inside of a cage or whatever, so what the actions that I was doing. But it wasn't done that way. It was almost like somebody was reaching out to me to teach me how I should have been living my life. And I accepted it. I accepted full accountability. Everything was done in black and white, right or wrong. And there was no fence in the middle. There was no gray matter at all. It was done as if this is the way you probably should have done it. Well, after that happened, I was standing there in the field, and a voice came from out of the cloud and said, to start walking forward. And I started walking. One thing I noticed was there were rays that were coming out from behind the clouds. And those rays were coming towards me as if to pull me towards the cloud. But on the other hand, I noticed that the flowers and the grass were following me as if to push me towards the cloud. It was the most unusual feeling. It was energy that I had never felt before. I wasn't floating towards the cloud. I was walking towards it. But it was as if they were pushing me and the rays were pulling me. Which, I don't know if you've ever had somebody embrace you and you realize that the feeling that you get when somebody puts their arms around you, and it's an energy you don't normally feel. In our home where I was growing up, nobody ever told you, they love you. I come from a broken family, and a lot of the time I lived on the streets, and so I never experienced that kind of love before in my life. But it felt good. It felt so good that I would have taken everything that it would have been given to me. It felt that good.
Thank you so much for watching this video. And for more NDE interviews, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to T&H Afterlife. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had an NDE?